Jake was an American photographer traveling through the Middle East, capturing the raw beauty of the desert landscapes. He had heard some of the local legends about spirits and jinns, but to him, they were just that, legends. One evening, while driving through a remote stretch of desert, his car suddenly broke down. With no cell service and the nearest village miles away, he decided to camp for the night and fix the car in the morning. As night fell, the vast emptiness around him became unsettling. The desert was eerily quiet, with no sound but the occasional gust of wind. Jake set up his tent and lay down to sleep, but the silence felt oppressive. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Around midnight, Jake was startled awake by a sound outside his tent, a soft, rustling noise like footsteps in the sand. He unzipped the tent and shined his flashlight into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing, but then, just beyond the reach of the light, he noticed something, a shadowy figure, standing completely still. "Hello?" Jake called out, his voice shaky, no response. The figure didn't move. It was tall, much taller than a person, and its form was vague, almost like smoke or mist, but it had an undeniable presence. Jake's stomach tightened with dread. He had encountered strangers in foreign lands before, but this felt different. There was something unnatural about it. He backed into the tent, his heart pounding, and zipped it up, trying to convince himself it was just his imagination. But then, the whispering started. It was soft at first, like a breeze passing through the sand, but it grew louder, surrounding the tent. Jake could make out words, though they were in a language he didn't understand. The voice was deep, guttural, and terrifying. Panicking, Jake grabbed his flashlight and knife and bolted out of the tent. The shadowy figure was gone, but the whispering persisted, swirling around him. He looked frantically in every direction but saw nothing. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to move. He ran toward the car, hoping to find shelter inside. As he reached the car, the whispering stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the voices. Jake fumbled for his keys and jumped inside, locking the doors behind him. He sat there in the darkness, clutching the steering wheel, trying to catch his breath. But just as he thought it was over, the car began to shake violently. Something was outside, pounding on the roof. He could hear it, heavy footsteps circling the car. But no matter how hard he looked, there was nothing there. The shaking grew more intense, and Jake could feel an oppressive presence pressing in on him from all sides. Desperate, he remembered a story he had heard from a local guide, a way to ward off jinn. With trembling hands, Jake began to recite the only prayer he could remember from his childhood, hoping it would help. As he spoke, the shaking slowly subsided. The footsteps faded into the distance. The presence, though still lingering, seemed to retreat. Jake didn't sleep that night. He stayed in the car until the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon. When he finally dared to step outside, the desert was calm again. No footprints, no signs of disturbance, nothing to suggest what had happened the night before. He didn't wait to fix the car. Jake packed up his things, and after several attempts, managed to get the engine started. As he drove away from that place, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him, watching from just beyond his sight. Even back in the safety of the city, Jake couldn't forget the shadow in the desert. He never returned to that part of the world, and he never spoke about that night, except to warn others about the dangers that lie hidden in the desert and the jinn that still roam beneath the stars.